Hi, I'm Amanda Call, and today I'd like to talk about trying to work a little bit smarter. So here's the thing. Age of Night pages, Age of Night being my big webcomic project that I've been doing for a lot of years. Age of Night pages are all traditionally done, and they can be kind of a bear. So, for example, what I'm talking about here, this right here, is one of my original comic pages for Age of Night. This is chapter 25, page 13. This has been online for a little while now, and you can see that I redrew essentially the same panel 6 times in order to show a sequence of things happening, like all from the same vantage point with no moving around of the camera. And the first time I drew it, I drew this first panel and I traced it and I lightboxed it to be in all 6 panels, and then I drew it over again, like tightened up the drawing after I traced it, and then I inked every single one of them with all of the background rendering of the rock textures and all of the different figures and everything, and I did all that. And I do stuff like that on Age of Night all the time. Now, why do I do this to myself? Partially, it is because I am slightly obsessive about how I do this project. It's also because I love it. I really love traditional media. It means a lot to me to be able to continue to make comic pages traditionally. Basically, all of Age of Night is just a giant love letter to traditional comic making techniques. And so, every page, I painstakingly draw and ink every single part of it, and it takes a very long time, but I only have to produce 1 page a week on average, so it's not really the end of the world if they take a little while. However, I am now working on a comic project that has to be done in a lot less time than that. So now I need to stop being so fussy about doing everything exactly traditionally and start doing things a little bit more efficiently. So this big project that I'm working on now is a comic project I've referenced a couple times on other videos and live streams and that sort of thing. It's a comic called I Am the First that I'm working on with my friend Jeremy Flagg. Jeremy's writing it. He's also helping me out a little bit on the workflow, which we'll talk about more later. And I am drawing the whole thing. But I'm not just drawing it. I'm penciling it, I'm inking it, I'm coloring it, and I'm lettering it. Now, penciling and inking is already a lot of work. Coloring adds a whole lot more work to the production of each page. Like, a whole lot. And the other thing is that the current timeline we have set for this project is that the whole book needs to be done in about a year. It looks like it's going to run to be around 100 pages, so that's more like 2 pages a week that have to be completed, and again, each page is going to require more work than one of my Age of Night pages because it also needs to be colored. So because I am me, I am still drawing and inking the pages traditionally. You can see at this stage, they look very similar to an Age of Night page. There's not a lot of heavy ink texturing because I'm going to be coloring it later, so that's all stuff that'll come in later digitally. After they're inked, they get scanned in, and then I send them off to Jeremy to do flats. Flats are where you first throw in the colors onto a page to just differentiate the different areas that are going to be different colors. Not exactly difficult work, but it is very time consuming. So he's been helping me out with getting a lot of the pages flatted so that I can go in and then just render them in color. You know, adding shadows and textures and highlights to make them pop. This whole rendering thing, though, still takes forever. It still takes a long time. So, upgrading my equipment was the first way that I decided to try to work smarter. This, by the way, is the big project that I got that Wacom tablet for. That's the reason that I bought that, is to work on this project, because trying to do all of this in a timely fashion on my little Intuos, you don't look at what you're drawing, you just look at the screen thing, that was never gonna work. It was way too slow. So far, the new tablet has been working really well. I can work a lot faster on it, and it's very comfortable to use for long periods of time. Let's see some more shortcuts that I've devised throughout working on the first chapter of this project. One of the first things I figured out to make rendering these pages easier was to create and reuse complicated assets. So in this scene, we have a comic book cover and a poster. I could have tried to redraw them again and again in perspective, and I did at first in the penciling and inking stage before realizing that that was foolish. So I rendered each of them in digital colors once, and then just moved them around and resized them wherever they appeared in the scene. I really utilized this technique on this page. So it's the same shot for 5 panels to try to emphasize the awkward silence going on between these two characters. So rather than draw the exact same background for all 5 panels, I made a separate background file. Alright, so I drew and inked this separately, and then Jeremy flatted it, and I colored it. The cool thing with the books here is that like there's only like 6 or 7 colors of books, and we were just very careful about spreading the color out so it's not quite as like obvious that it's a limited palette of books. It just, you know, it makes it a lot easier to work with, but rather than having to pick a different color for every single book, but it still ends up looking like it has a lot of variety. So anyway, this is what's going on behind the characters. So now we can just flatten this, and we're gonna select the whole thing. So now what we're gonna do is put that in here. It's the same size as the panel, because I was smart when I started this whole thing. We're just gonna drop this in every time, into every panel. We're gonna make all of those layers of books one layer. Now, I'm gonna turn that off so it's not distracting while I'm trying to do this. So now I'm going to select the unique color that I selected for the background, not contiguous, so it's all of them. Invert my selection, Control-Shift-I, so now it's selected everything that is not that background color. Make sure I'm working on the layer with the books, and then delete everything that's not where the books belong. Hey, look at that! And now I have this fully populated background for all of those panels, just like that. I am going to turn it down a little bit. It's very like busy, so I'm just going to turn the opacity down slightly. Yeah, we'll give it like 75%. There are going to be word balloons in front of some of it, so it'll be a little bit less busy, but with it at full opacity it was just a little bit too strong. It was competing with the characters too much, so we're just going to knock it back a little bit there so that they pop out from it because they're more saturated. And there you go. Went from a barely looking finished page to pretty much a done page in just a couple easy steps. Saved myself a lot of time there. I used a similar technique for creating textures and patterns in perspective. So for example, I wanted the school floor to have that funky industrial splattered tile look. That would really be tricky to consistently render in perspective. So I made a separate school floor file. I dropped that file into the scenes where I needed it and used the transform tool to make it the right size and orientation. Then I'd use the distort function of the transform tool, sorry, the menu doesn't appear on screen capture for some reason, and push and pull the texture image until it aligned with the perspective of the scene. This involves a lot of eyeballing and having a good intuitive grasp of perspective, but you could make this easier on yourself by drawing in perspective grid guidelines on your page from the start. Then, just like with the library scene, I select the floor color, invert the selection so everything that is not the floor is selected, and delete all the not floor from the texture layer. You can see once I turn the shadows and highlights back on how well the texture blends into the scene. These techniques all really came together for elements like the wallpaper at Alex's house. This asset I created entirely in Photoshop by just making one section of the pattern and then copying and pasting it and utilizing Photoshop's automatic spacing guides to get a consistent tacky floral pattern. From there, I could use the same select, transform, and trim method that I did for the textured floor. So that's what I've been up to. Hopefully you learned some cool new tricks, or this gave you some ideas of ways to be more efficient in how you produce artwork. Let me know down in the comments if there are any kinds of shortcuts that you like to use in digital art that I didn't cover here. I'm always eager to learn more about getting through this project in a more efficient manner, because I got a lot ahead of me yet. And also, this project that we're doing right now, it's about to become live on Kickstarter. I'm gonna have a link down in the thing, and you can go to it and click to follow the project. It's gonna be going live this week, and it's a very important project that means a lot to both of us, so I would really appreciate it if you would check it out and follow the project, share it with people, all of that good stuff, like you do here on the video, the things with the sharing and letting people know. You know what we gotta do here. Thanks everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye! I put ink down on top of it. Ugh. I hit myself in the head with a comic page.